when we get used to seeing things and acting on faith, we don't have to go back there and try to get the motion in there anymore that we used to have to get. I mean, we don't have to go look for the mouse. We just reach in there and we move it. Does it make sense? Because so many times, whatever we get used to is the way we'll walk it. And it's been my goal over the years that I get used to faith. That instead of just saying this and that and, by faith, and it just being something out there different, just a way of speaking, I want it to be a lifestyle. Yeah. A lifestyle where that comes first. Yeah. Well, first we believe for it, and then we see it. Why? Because that's an order. You remember the old saying, which I've heard many, many times in my life, says, well, I'll believe it when I see it. That's backwards. The Word says, believe it, and then you'll see it. When we get that in order, we'll be able to see a whole lot greater things than if we're just going to believe it after we see it. And so let's get things in order. And as I was looking from last week, we were talking last week, says, what about the works? What happened? What are we doing? What are the works in our lives? Because Jesus said, believe me that I am the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. And a lot of churches don't like that. Because they say, oh, it's all grace. There's no works. The works, that Jesus took care of it. It's all grace. Well, there's works also. Because Jesus didn't come and say, hey, I'm from the Father and it's all by grace. That's why I'm here. No, he told the people, he said, if you are not believing the words I say, why don't you just believe what I did? Well, there's a lot of people can't say that because they're only words. Oops. And then we can look back and say, well, what did you do? Oh, well, it's all by grace. People tell me, they're laid back. That's the country term for not doing anything. I don't mind the laid back mentality about having things in order and being able to relax and take the load off, but I really get concerned about the laid back issue where nothing matters anymore and you just don't have to do anything. That's not laid back. That's just a lazy person. And the Word doesn't talk well about lazy persons. So yeah, but God did everything. He sure did. He gave us a part. What's our part? When they asked Jesus, what should we do to do the works of God? What did he say? You remember? He said, this is the works of God. Believe on the one he sent. And you're saying, that doesn't sound like work. Try it. Let me know how easy that is. There's a bit of work involved. But you need to put the Word in so you can believe what he said. Because without putting the Word in and without getting the principles and the standards of God in order, you can't believe what he said. Because he said some really wild things. Listen to some of these things that he said. He said, most assuredly. Now he's saying, listen guys, this is what I'm telling you is really, really important. Most assuredly, listen closely. I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. Whoa, whoa. Jesus said that? Yep. Jesus said that. And now what did he say we need to do? Believe on the one the Father sent, right? Yes. Well, how hard is that? Well, the one the Father sent said, he said that. Yep. How hard is that? Well, we can't do that. Stop, stop, stop. He said, most assuredly. Does Jesus speak only the truth? Yeah. So he speaks only the truth, and he says, what are the works that we need to work? The works of God. He said, this is the works of God, that you believe on the one he sent. That would be him, right? Jesus? And now Jesus' words, now we're supposed to believe what he's, the one that was sent. The one that was sent says this. Most assuredly, this is super important. This is top of the top here. Listen closely. I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. And greater works than these he will do, because I'm going to the Father. How hard is it to believe on the one he sent? Yeah, but you said about works. I'm not saying how you do the works. I'm saying what kind of works came out of what you were doing. You know, some people, you know, it's all about how you do it. It's not about what you accomplished. It's interesting because when Jim and I started working in the painting world, we did things different than people did around here. Because we learned to paint down south. And down south, you couldn't paint until you pressure washed, because you had to pressure wash all the mildew and the grunge and the grime off that came from the sea before you could get paint to stick. In Pennsylvania, they never did that. When we came back to Pennsylvania, we started pressure washing a job before we painted. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're getting it ready for paint." "Well, you don't have to do that." I said, "Well, that's just how we do it." "Well, do you have to?" "Yeah." "Well, why don't you just go ahead and do it your way and see how it works out?" I said, "Okay, we'll do that." You know, we're working with a large contractor who actually owned a set of buildings, and their painting contractors couldn't keep up on all these buildings, so they got us to come in and paint a section. You know, we did it the way we did it, and they thought it was really strange and unusual. They did it the way they did it. And when 3 years came around, theirs needed repainted. And ours looked like new. 5 years came around, theirs is going almost to repainted the second time, and ours still looking pretty decent. And after a while they said, "I think you got something there with that pressure washing thing." Now it's interesting because when we get into the Word and we get into faith and we get into doing some things by faith, it's like, well, we need this money to do this over here. Well, how are you going to do it? Well, I'm going to work that job and that job and that job, because that's how you do it, to be able to get the money to do this by faith. Is it making sense? And then you say, well, by faith, the Lord says what? I need to listen to what He has to say, and I need to believe on the one He sent, and I'm going to do greater works than He did. And so I'm listening to the one, and He says, do this and this over here. Well, it's different than that. They're having 3 jobs, so I earn the money to make it happen. And so I do what He tells me to do. And you know, out of the blue, the money comes in. Well, how could it happen? Oh, it just happened. It didn't just happen. You heard from the king. The king gave you instructions, and he talked to someone, and they brought it. What about the 3 jobs? I'm not saying you shouldn't work a job if he tells you to work the job. But I'm saying the job is not your supply, your provision, the one who makes it work for you. The king is. Should we all quit our jobs? No, you should all listen to what he says. He doesn't tell us all to go quit our jobs. But sometimes he tells us to do bigger things than we could possibly do by working our jobs. How do you do that? You must listen to how he says to do it. Because it starts working by faith instead of by what? The sweat of the brow. Getting really quiet in here now. Let's continue on a little bit. Okay, continue on. Do our works glorify the Father. John 14:13 says, and whatever you ask in my name, that I will do. Now that's really getting different, because earlier he says we're going to do the works he did and even greater, right? Yeah. Now he's still talking. He says whatever you ask in his name, he says, I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. Who's the pressure on? I see 2 places where there's pressure. Pressure number 1 is, what are you going to ask? Yeah. There's a little bit of pressure there because it needs to be in order. Yeah. How do you know what to ask? Well, you need to believe on the one he sent. That's how you know what to ask. Well, how do you do that? Well, you listen to his words and you just agree with what he says. And then you start getting in tune with what he's in tune with. And when you ask the right thing. And I'm sorry for my people overseas. I'm getting a little bit fast again. And sometimes it's hard for them to understand. So I'll try to slow down a little bit. But this needs to make sense. Yes. Because it makes what we call the impossible possible. Yeah. Because we start doing it the way he does it. Yeah. And he said, with him, all things are possible. Yeah. And so he says, whatever you ask, I will do, so that the Father be glorified in the Son. Now listen, if you ask anything in my name, I'll do it. And people think that's a free ticket. It's a blank check.
I remember one of the apostles then says about, you ask but do not have, because you ask amiss of your own lusts and desires, and not of the will of the Father. You're not truly in tune with what he wants.
That's right. They ask what? Because of the lust of the flesh and the pride of the eye and trying to make things work for me. Well, what about if we've heard and there's this massive project we need to do and we can't possibly do it by working hard enough because there just ain't enough time in a day to work that many hours or earn that much money to do this big project. And we come before Him, we find out it's His project, His request, and we ask for that project or for the finances to fulfill that project or whatever He directs us to ask. Then is it in order? Yes. Because we heard, we stepped, we believe, we ask. But now if we're just floating along there, you know, as I said earlier, laid back, relax, got our strawberry smoothie, you know, and our feet up on the hammock, and life is good. There's nothing wrong with that once in a while, but not day in and day out. And then we want to ask what? Oh, we want to ask for a bigger place. We want to ask for a refill on the smoothie. We want to ask for all kinds of stuff to make me feel good. There's nothing wrong with me feeling good, but that's not the key to life. The key to life is hearing from the King and doing what because that's the only place you'll get fulfillment. When you're living a hollow, empty life, people go off because they're living hollow, empty life. That's what we talked about for 20 minutes before the video started. People with their hollow, empty lives because they're living for their own fulfillment and there's just nothing there to make them feel like they've done anything that was worth living for. And so things get real stupid real quick. And so now He says, if you ask anything in my name, I'll do it. And then He goes on. The very next verse says, if you love me, keep my commandments. What's His commandments? Do it like He does it. I mean, as easy as I can sum up all the commandments is, do it like He does it. He says, I gave you this command to love. What does He do? He shows us how to love. I do the commandment, you know, He shows us how to do these things. And He just do it like He does it. That's the key to it. And so, as we walk this walk, it starts looking a little bit more possible than if we just read down through there and He says, boy, you're going to do the works that He does and even greater. It's like, yeah, all right. Really? Have you seen anybody do that? Well, first of all, don't base on what's possible by what you've seen people do. Base it on God's Word. And then secondly, not whatever we came up with that would be the cool thing, the cool factor. What does He want to do and why does He want to do it? And it's not even always why does He want to do it, it's what does He want to do. Because sometimes we ain't going to go on with it and tell me why. Well, maybe it don't matter why. Just believe what He said and go forward with it. So let's look at this again. John 14, 1-4. It says, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many rooms. Another version says there are many mansions. If it were not so, would I not have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go prepare a place for you, I will come back to take you with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way and the place where I am going. Well, they stumbled on that one a little bit. They first of all said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to be with the Father. Yeah, but we don't know the way. He said, do you know me? Yeah. Well, then you know the way. Well, what's the way? Well, do things like He does them. How did He do it? He heard, He did. He says, I don't do anything lest I hear it from the Father. I don't say anything unless I hear it from the Father. And I see people go off the deep end on that. They're all tangled up in the grocery store, stalled out in the cereal aisle. I say, God, should I get the Corn Flakes or the Rice Krispies? I don't think He really cares. I doubt that neither of them's too good for you, but you know, let's stay before God about things that matter. And if you're just overdoing it on the Corn Flakes or the Rice Krispies, He'll tell you. He can help you keep things in order. But let's not make majors out of minors and then end up missing the point. Does that make sense? And so He's saying, listen, I'm going to prepare a place, and He said, I'm going to come back and get you, and we'll go and be there together. And so we believe that, and now the interesting thing is, I believe the world at large right now knows something is up. I haven't talked to a pastor in the last multiple years that don't believe we are at the end of the end of the end times. And these last couple of months, it's like the end of all that yet times. Because what's the word say? Everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And we've seen economies collapse for something that ain't even happening. Economies collapsing because of a virus. In some of these countries, the virus never even made it there. And if it did, there might be 2 people in the entire nation. And yet they closed the doors to everything and collapsed their own economy. They were saying just recently how terribly bad it is in Fiji at the moment because of their economy imploding because of it's basically a tourist industry. It's like, wow. They export sugar and water, and the rest of their money comes from tourism. Well, they just turned off all the tourism, and how much sugar and water is going out? Because everything, all the flights are shut down, everything's shut down. And so it's quite interesting. And why was that? Oh, so, the coronavirus. Well, they only know the name, they don't even know the virus. The islands in the Pacific, there's very, very few, if any, cases. I talked to Pastor Harrison this week 3 or 4 times, which is cool. I got to really chat with him multiple times. And the interesting thing, he knows hundreds, he knows thousands of people. And he lives in an area that he reaches into Mombasa, he reaches in, and that's the 2nd largest city in their country. He reaches into Mtwapa, and that whole region there, all the way down into Tanzania, and he has connections and contacts all over the place. And he said, interesting, he said, I don't personally know one single person that got the virus, much less died from it or even got sick from it. He says, I don't know a single one. I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm in the middle of a place they said is the hot spot. In fact, our famous governor says, you know, well, we can't open Lebanon until last because it's the hot spot. And in the hot spot, I think I know 4 or 5 people that got it. And I know one remotely that passed away from it. And she was a very elderly lady, and I don't know what other issues there were. But I know a whole family that tested positive. And because they tested positive, they're locking everything down and everything's going crazy because, whoa, man, we all got the virus. And the only reason they knew is because Dad wasn't feeling so good. So they went and got tested. Dad had it. And so they got it and everybody got tested and everybody's locked down. And wow, 3 days Dad was feeling great. Nobody else had any symptoms whatsoever. What's the matter with these people? You know, I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just saying there's foolishness abounds with this crazy virus thing. Yes, people died from it. People died from crazier stuff than that. But you got an entire family, and they had a big party, so there was like 50 more people involved with that, and they were all shook up because now everybody's going to die from the virus. One guy had symptoms for 3 days, and nobody else even showed symptoms, but many of them showed positive on the test. What am I saying? It's garbage. You sit around and believe that kind of stuff, and they were saying, what, in Brazil? What was that? 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. There's truckloads of bodies coming out of Brazil. Everybody's dying from the virus. That's total garbage. We had friends just came back from Brazil. Not a single word about truckloads of bodies. But the news had it on. Yeah, well, they had the same people on the East Coast on the beach when they shouldn't be. It was the same people on the West Coast on the beach when they shouldn't be. I thought, isn't that interesting? The news used the same exact picture for a beach in the West Coast as they did for a beach in the East Coast to promote their terrible about being on the beach. It was the same people. They were wearing the same stuff. It was the same sunset. It was the same picture. And yet one was supposed to be in LA and one was supposed to be in Ocean City. So I'm saying if you start believing the news and you believe all the hype and you believe all the stuff they're putting out there and you believe about dying from the virus and all that, if you can believe that, why can't you believe truth? You know you get to believe whatever you want to believe. It don't have to be true or a lie. You can believe it. There are people that believe the Flat Earth Society believes that the Earth is still flat. There are people that absolutely believe we never made it to the moon. And you know, it makes no difference to any of us whether we made it to the moon or not. But the bottom line is, they just believe that was all made up. It was some big government thing. And the Earth is flat and this and they believe the coronavirus is going to destroy the world. I mean, hello! The numbers backing it are so inflated, it's ridiculous, and yet they're small. I had a personal friend that was a nurse, and she said as she was filling out the forms, they said, you will put corona on there. She says, the dude died from pneumonia. They said, you will put corona on there. She said, why? They said, end of discussion. She come to find out the hospital gets $39,000 for everybody that died from corona. And so it don't matter if you got run over by a truck, you died from corona. I think it's a Corona beer truck. Sorry. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Numbers 14:21. It says, truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of God. Talking about end times. Now, if we believe it's end times, we believe everything that's shaken can be shaken, we see the whole economy's turned upside down by some crazy thing that they put out there that this could happen to you by noon tomorrow, and so on and so on, and everybody's dying by the virus, but they're not. And everybody needs to wear a mask, but then the Surgeon General said you shouldn't wear a mask because, you know, the virus is 0.02 microns and the mask only sorts things out to 1 micron, and so it's like putting a chain link fence up for mosquitoes. You see what I'm saying? It just doesn't work. And the Surgeon General says, you know, the virus is attracted to your mask because it's warm and moist. And if you'll get rid of the mask and breathe real air, you'll be a lot better shape. Unless you're sick, then maybe you should wear one. And then you walk into a hardware store and they say, where's your mask? So, well, I thought we're in the green now. But the governor says, do you see any problems with the media? When we look at God's Word, it's truth. And the truth says, he says, your job is to believe me. And then what did he say? And then you're going to go do the works that I do and even greater works. And then what did he say? He said, now, listen to the Father. Let's look. Whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified. Now, are you seeing what's happening here? First, believe on him, and then he says, you're going to do what I said. Then he says, you ask the Father, and I'm going to do it. Now he says, don't let your hearts be troubled, because I'm going to sort a place out for you. Okay? And then he says, as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Then you say, whoa, you know, I heard all about the virus. I didn't hear about the glory. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open, man. You know what the word says? It says, in Habakkuk again, it says, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And it says that a couple places. You say, oh, well, you know, this is talking about this and that's talking about that. The bottom line is it says it'll be covered with glory, right? And we go on, it says, Ephesians 5:26, it says that he might, this is talking about the church, that he might, Jesus, might sanctify and cleanse her, the church, with the washing of water of the Word. What happens? You hear the Word, it washes all this garbage away. What does the Word say? Where does health come from? You know, I read a book one time that says, foods that heal. That's not true. That's not true. There are foods that you can eat that are better for you than foods that you can eat that are worse for you, but there are not foods that heal. The Lord is a healer. And He'll give you foods that you can use and He will heal you, but the foods aren't the healer. And the interesting thing about it is we get it all mixed up because we want to put the cart before the horse on these things. Here it says that He's going to cleanse the church. How? By washing of the water of the Word. In other words, when we hear the Word, what did we just hear about the Word? The glory is coming. It's going to cover the earth like the sea. Okay, we heard we're going to do even greater things than He did. We heard we asked the Father and He will do it for us because it glorifies the Father. Is it taking the pressure off of us? We don't have to perform, but there is work to do. And the work to do is to get things in order to believe right and to ask the right things. The performance is, He says, and I will do what you ask because it glorifies the Father. Is it starting to make sense? As I continued on, I was just talking last week about some places where we reached out with refreshing leaders and it made a difference with people's lives. And some of them, it seemed like it didn't work. But we were told to do it and we did it. They say, well, some of it worked for a time, then it didn't work later. We were just told that we did what we're told to do, right? Now, the interesting thing about it is, I want to show you a picture. This actually happened. I was at work. In that point, I was designing cabinetry. And guy came down from the shop. And coming down from the shop, he says, I got a splinter in my hand. And he says, I think I might have to go to the doctor because I can't pull it out with my pliers. I thought, geez, that's a little rough. And so he heads off to the hospital. I didn't see him at that point. I just heard the story, and the Lord said, pray for it. I said, okay, the guy's not a Christian, the guy don't know the Lord, the guy don't give a flip about the Lord. The guy is in a crazy lifestyle and all this kind of stuff. The Lord said, pray for him. I said, okay. So I just took a moment while I'm working, running the computer, doing all what I do, and I prayed for this guy. And he went off to the hospital to get this splinter out. He came back from the hospital, he says, he said it wasn't that bad. He said, I took a picture of it so I could show you. And he went back to work. And he had no damage with the bone, no damage with ligaments, no damage with muscles, and went back to work the exact same day, just a couple hours after he came back from the hospital. And that's what was in his finger.
And that's what he couldn't pull out with his pliers.
That's what he couldn't pull out with his pliers. He failed to mention it was through 2 fingers, and the thing is big around as a finger, and it's a piece of hardwood that came shooting out of the saw and went straight through 2 fingers. And he said, I might have to go to the doctor because I can't pull this out with my pliers. He went to the doctor and they removed that thing, surgically removed that thing from his hand. He went back to work.
Then you better take a picture.
I can take a picture now. Sorry about that. That's an actual picture of an actual guy that I actually know. And the bottom line is, he's not a believer. And yet the Lord said, pray for this man. And this man did not miss a day of work. He didn't miss an afternoon of work. He missed 2 or 3 hours, half an hour to ride to the hospital, half an hour to wait, half an hour to get it out, and half an hour to come back, and he's right back at work. Now, I know most of us wouldn't have done that because that looked like a good excuse to not have to work the rest of the day. My point is not anything about that. My point is God able?
Yes, he is.
That happened.
Yeah.
I know it's not there because it's grossing everybody out, but that happened.
Yep.
That literally happened. I saw it. And the interesting thing about it is, if we will allow God, He says, and greater things than these you will do.
Mom.
And so what happens? Jesus walks up to the guy that's paralyzed, and he said, get up and walk. And the dude walks.
Yeah.
And the Lord says, it wasn't like, hey, Claire, pray for this guy. He's in bad shape. It's just like, pray for this guy. He's headed off to the hospital. So okay, so Lord, meet the guy where he's at. You know, I pray that splinter would be taken care of. I pray that he'd just be fine. I don't remember my exact words. I just prayed for the guy, whatever words the Lord gave me. And he comes back to work, and he's working at them. So that wasn't so bad. And I saw the pictures of, whoa, whoa, it wasn't so bad. Whoa. How many times the things today, what happened? You know, Sean and the boys get run off the road by some crazy nutcase that was going off, man. I mean, the guy was just losing it. Nobody got hurt. The car was totaled, but nobody got hurt. They continued on, and they're on to their vacation spot with the family they were going with. Is God good? God is awesome, man. And I told him, I said, listen, focus on God and how awesome He is and enjoy your week away. Don't think about some nutcase running you off the road.
That's right.
And so we got to, what do we focus on? What do we believe for? And is God going to or not going to cover the earth with His glory?
Yes, He will.
And what's His glory? It's like the manifest presence of God Himself.
Yes.
Whoa! And I keep saying, and it's going to happen suddenly.
Mom.
What happens when something happens suddenly?
Happens quickly.
It happens
All of a
quickly.
sudden.
Things don't look the same as they looked before.
That's right.
It's just like, now it was, now it ain't. Or, there it wasn't, now it is. Depending on which direction things are going.
Yep.
Interesting, because I was teaching about this a little while back, and I said, it's a little like this, guys. You say I got this big table up here, and this table is stacked high with TNT. And all the fuses come out to one little fuse down here in the corner. And I'm explaining to you that I'm going to make a little bit of I'm going to light my lighter that I had in the cave, and I'm going to light this fuse, and something's going to happen very suddenly.
Yeah.
Now, what I tell you is very important. There are certain places that you can go that you'll be completely safe. But there are certain places that you would die when this suddenly happens. And what happens? People believe that because they saw, say, whoa, you know, and they go and they'll hide behind something, they'll do whatever they need to do because a suddenly is about to happen. I want to tell you something, in the spirit world, a suddenly is about to happen. And it's bigger than any pile of TNT you've ever seen, or plastic explosives, or anything that we can make go boom. It's called filling the earth with the glory, and things will change so dramatically, so quickly, that people don't even know what happened. And he said, yeah, but you know, what about the enemy? The enemy is nothing towards God's plan. I mean, let me put it this way, he don't have it going on. I mean, he's all smoke and mirrors. What happens when you break the mirror? You see the enemy. If you look closely, you can see him now. He's holding some cards. One says COVID, one says, you know, disruption of the government, another one says, you know, the economy crashes, he's holding a lot of cards. Don't allow that smoke and mirrors to get you derailed. Start believing for the suddenly. Now the interesting thing is, people that don't believe something sudden is going to happen, don't get in position for it. If that goes off, and you're out of position, or you stuck your head out to see why did it go off, it'll finish you. Let's make it a little bit more personal. How about Joseph? And Joseph had an amazing call on his life. And Joseph heard that he's going to rule and reign. And Joseph heard that his family and others are going to bow down to him. And Joseph heard all these things, and he ends up what? In prison. Oh boy. Was he believing for a suddenly? He was. In prison, what was he doing? The best he knew how to do. The next thing you know, he's running the prison. And the next thing you know, he's telling the people their dreams flawlessly. That's his gift. And the next thing you know, the dreams happened exactly like he said it would. And then what happens? 2 more years of staying in position, waiting for a suddenly. If he just stuck his head out and said, okay, I'm done. I'm carrying the keys to the cell blocks anyway because I feed everybody. Tonight, I'm going back home. How much would that help? His brother's already tried to kill him once. If he shows up back home again being the same old Joseph, they just try to kill him again. But now he stayed in position, and one night, things happened suddenly. Because the king had a dream, Joseph explained the dream, and he went from prison to second in command in one day. That's suddenly. And so how do you think it works when the earth is filled with His glory? How sudden can things change in your life? If you're in position. If you're not, you say, oh man, you're going to lose a finger, man. You're going to... Be careful with that stuff. You know, it looked like you might lose a finger, but be careful with that stuff. What happened? Nothing. He came back to work. Put a Band-Aid on. You know, I know it's a little bit of a gross picture, but it explains the power of God in just a very small way. The power of God is so much bigger than that. What did the Word say? The Word said Jesus talked to the maimed. Because you know what happens when somebody's maimed? There's parts missing, man. It's like the guy has an arm missing instead of a splinter in his finger. And Jesus, the maimed were made whole. How about that? And Jesus said, you're going to do the works that I do. How about that? And he said, even greater works. How about that? Well, how can we possibly do that? Believe on the one He sent. Is it making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's take this home with us, that we can believe on the one He sent. Let's not sit around and meditate and run every news article you see. I mean, I can bring Facebook up and it gives me a COVID thing. Is you want an update on COVID? No, I don't want an update on COVID.
My bank app will do that.
Your bank app does it. Actually, mine does also. And any place you click on the news, it does it. You walk down the street. I've seen the billboard signs that light up. It's saying the latest on COVID. It gives you a web address. I mean, what are you talking? How can you push something that lame, that hard? That's totally amazing to me. You know, there's still over a 99% possibility that if you catch it, you become healed, whole again. There's a, what's it called? The rate of survival. Recovery rate is still over 98 in the 99% range. If you got a 99% range of recovery, what's all the noise about? And so let's be really careful what we actually listen to, what we believe, and what we stand, and how we believe for the suddenly. See, the enemy's been saying something's going to happen suddenly. Everybody's going to die because of this. It's going to happen suddenly. All the economies are going to fall apart. It's going to happen suddenly. It's not working out for him. There's something in his way. It's called the church. And the church is being washed by the water of what? The Word.
Yeah.
And the church is being made spotless bride for the King of Kings.
Right.
And the church is becoming ready. And the glory is being poured out. And things are changing, man. So let's...
Why do you think they're all trying to make it so the church isn't meeting?
Yeah, they're trying to make the churches a meeting. They're trying to divide everybody every place. I mean, even the kids going to camp, they're not even allowed to be in a group in the camp. They have to make little cell groups of 10 people at the maximum, and they're allowed to come and converse with each other. For 25 years we tried to get rid of cliques,
Yeah.
and now they're enforcing cliques.